So let's talk about some of the strategies that you and quantum contract solutions employ to avoid disputes.
Okay, so avoiding disputes are so important, right?
Oh, 100%. Hey.
It's so we know from our data that if you decide, if you know there's a dispute coming and you're 100, look, let me give you an analogy.
Go on.
You're driving along in the car.
Yeah.
And you stop at the traffic lights.
Yeah.
You've done everything perfectly. A guy rear ends you, bang, hits the back of you, right? And he gets out of the car and he walks up to you and he says, hey, totally my fault. I'll pay for everything, right? And you're like, oh, okay, great, okay. The thing is, you still aren't at status quo. You still lost money in this exchange, because you're going to have to go and get quotes to get your panel beaters and whatever before you give it to the insurance company. You're going to have to get in touch with the insurance company. You're going to have to get a higher car. The value of your car has gone down because it is now crashed. You can't say it hasn't been crashed. So there's all of these.
And you also don't have beneficial use of your car when you actually need it. That's disruption.
100%, 100%. And so now, even though you were completely he was completely in the wrong, he took all of it, you're still at a loss. Yeah. Now in construction, that's never going to happen. No one's ever going to say I'm completely in the wrong, right? But this is it. When you get into a dispute, even if you're fully in the right, you're still going to lose money. So you take a step back and you know, I think we've been through more than 1,000 or something of these. And so with that, if you get into a dispute, it is better to sit down and try and nut out a deal that where you give 5 or 10% away is going to cost you. That is going to be better off financially than going down the route of a dispute without fail. And so that is one thing just to consider. But really, the whole thing is how people don't want to be perceived as contractual. And my challenge to whoever's listening to this podcast is that the best guy, think of you, whatever you do, think of the biggest guy in your sector. Is that person commercial or contractual? 100% they are. 100%. Right? And so what we like to say is, this is the problem that people have. People don't want to wind people up, right? I don't want to be contractual. I want to be perceived as, really easy to deal with, but that's not how it works. Right? They don't respect you. And so, but the thing is, if you get contractual halfway through a project, the whole way through that you just done whatever they've asked you to do and you haven't been contractual, and then all of a sudden there's a problem and then you decide to get contractual, then relationships can go wrong. Okay. Because you kind of have to do that, but you've left it too long. If you started that
meeting of the minds from the get-go.
Yes, exactly. That's it, Andy. If at the start, you started off contractual. You submitted your notices, you submitted your change orders, you submitted EOTs, variations, whatever you call them in your country, exactly according to the contract, exactly like you would with TQs or side instructions or whatever. Same thing. Yeah. You applied the same philosophy. You submitted it exactly like that. They wouldn't think that you're commercial or contractual. They'd be like, hey, they're switched on, those guys. They're very, very professional. And so as you've done that, first of all, they think you're more professional because that's what the big guys do, right? And so oh, these guys know what they're talking about. They'll respect you a lot more. Okay, your cash flow will be better because you'll know, are you getting paid for these variations or not, or change orders, because you see it's happening. Yeah. But then we get into that final quarter of a construction project where all of the disputes happen, right? Squeaky bum time, I like to call it.
Oh, yeah.
And then in that period, that's when it matters. And so if you're in that period and you're going in now, people are like, well, what about relationships? Are relationships important? Relationships not important? The cold hard facts about it is at the moment is relationships aren't as important as they used to be. They are still, however, very important. But this is what I'd like you to think. Instead of going into a meeting, this meeting we're talking about, right? And you're speaking to them, their project, right? You can be sitting on a load of paperwork, a load of submitted everything, right? Or you can be sitting on nothing, right? And in both of those circumstances, you can use your relationship to progress the deal, which is fantastic. That's using the relationship. But in one, you've got no leverage whatsoever. You're in there cap in hand, and you're probably angry about the whole thing. The other one, you've got a load of leverage, you've got a load of documents, you got a load of stuff behind you, and you can be like, okay, well, look, we did this, here are all our costs, you can see all our paperwork, you can see clearly, blah, blah, blah. How about we agree on this figure here? And they're like, oh, okay, right. And if you're speaking to the right guy, that is the best way to resolve any dispute or any potential dispute.
So at what point in time then would you go, yeah, shit hits the fan, I'm going to bring a delayed dispute resolution team in?
Oh, like as soon, like the whole way through the project. So in each contract, there will be a dispute clause that
100%.
says,
yeah,
if something has happened, submit a notice of dispute. As soon as it happens, submit a notice of dispute. Most notice of disputes, if the dispute clause will say it will compel them to sit down and have a meeting. You want to make sure that it doesn't say the same guy you've been dealing with the whole time. You want to make sure it's a senior representative, and then you sit down with their boss and you iron it out. Okay, but more often than not, if you are on top of your contractual paperwork, more often than not, there won't be a dispute in the first place. Or secondly, it'll only be in that final quarter. And typically what they tend to do is offset your final payment claim or your second final payment claim against some perceived thing, right? So they'll say, oh,
retention.
well, you're late by 20 days. And you're like, I'm not late by 20 days. And imagine that's the argument.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, you're late by 20 days. We're going to offset against your final payment claim. And that's typically what happens. Something like that happens. And then that's when you have your battle, your argument, and you try and work it out.
Yeah, it's always quite difficult when it gets to that point, isn't it? A lot of broken relationships.
If you've been waiting, you've been trying to get all of these change orders across the line, and it all goes into that final payment claim. You want to get it all approved, when you're not going to see most of it, and you're
100%.
going to be bent over a barrel on a cash flow.
So so I've always strongly believed that time's actually more important than money. You lose money, you can make more money. You lose time, you never get it back.
Just in the general philosophy of life.
General philosophy of life, that's what I do for a living too. I manage time.
Yes.
See how you manage contracts, I manage time, right?
Yes,
and
you do indeed.
I kind of follow the same principle that I tell all of these people. I'm like, dude, you've got to get a notice of delay in, right? And it's got to have the associated program portraying the impact, the contract clauses that you're claiming against, the root causes of delay, and the impact of it. It's not hard. It's the world's simplest thing to do.
And the thing as well is, this is the only time generally where I think this, right? It is better to submit a bad document on time than wait for a perfect document and submit it late.
Yeah, because you can always submit a second revision of the same document.
Exactly.
But then you've notified the other person that something is coming.
That's it.
Yeah, interesting. We've got similar philosophies in life, and that's extremely interesting.